All right, I see our faces. That's always a good sign. The OBS gods are with us. So, good afternoon, Chandra. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing very well, thank you, Nate. How are you?
I am well. Thanks for joining us here. It's kind of a dreary start to the week here in the Midwest. It has been rainy and cold. I hope your weather's better than mine.
I'm sorry to hear that. It's a bit gloomy here today, but it's been beautiful weather for the last 2 days. And it was
Fantastic.
super cold before that. It's New Jersey. Every day is a new weather.
I think you could say that about a lot of places, that if you don't like the weather, just wait a few days and or wait a few minutes in many cases and it'll change.
Minutes.
We were
Yes.
talking about that in the pre-show with Beth that, Minnesota, at least in springtime, we see everything. Everything from 80 degrees to snow and back again in the course of about 36 hours. And that's pretty much been the case this spring. But theoretically, it's going to warm up and, just in time for summer. So, how you been? What's new? I love your shirt, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Devnexus.
Fantastic, fantastic. And I do want to apologize. I didn't wear this shirt, to call out your club in any way, shape, or form. This Man City did win the League Cup, and I just wanted to, show off a little bit. So
Congratulations to
my
Manchester.
apologies. So
No, no, no apologies needed. Enjoy your victories.
do you have any thoughts on the Super League? Who knew this was going to turn into sports talk radio here? But for those of you who aren't sort of following, a handful of Premier League teams and a few other teams from Spain and Italy as well decided they were going to form this Super League, and 48 hours later, that all just evaporated. Yeah, it's part of the sporting world that I, as an American, don't completely understand about how football works in the
Yeah,
rest of the world.
I can't claim to know much about it. I do when I get to watch, root for Liverpool and Man U, whichever team's winning, of course.
Okay, well, no, that's
But
fair.
that's
That's
all.
fair. Well, and as we discussed, I do have a Man U shirt upstairs. It's an older one, but I do like red and I do like sky blue. So I've been a very proud Man City supporter for many years now. So I will say
Very
that's my
cool.
my favorite.
Very
But it was
cool.
nice to see Liverpool win. I love John Oliver. I know he's a huge Liverpool fan, so I was delighted to see that they were able to finally win one for him. So there you go.
Very nice.
Anyway, so now you're wearing the Devnexus shirt. We didn't get the chance to be in person this year. Are you excited for next year? You think we'll be in person next year? Where do you think we're going to land?
I am super excited about next year. I believe it will be an in-person conference by next year. Knock on wood. I believe America is doing well in terms of vaccinations, and hopefully by then we'll have a majority, if not all of us, vaccinated, at least the adults. And I'm definitely looking forward to DevNexus 2022 in person.
I think it's going to be interesting to see what events look like later this year or next year, once we all feel more comfortable kind of coming out of our little hibernation here. I'm curious to see. You also run the Garden State Java user group. Do you have any thoughts on how that's going to look moving forward? I mean, there's some advantages to the virtual side of this. We can draw from pretty much everywhere, but it's kind of nice to get together with your peeps. So what do you think that's going to start looking like for you guys?
Yeah, so we've been actively engaged in conversations, and thank you for that question, Nate, because it's something that's heavy on our mind. We are looking forward to seeing how we can go back into an in-person model. But at the same time, we have a majority audience coming in from other parts of the world these days. Um, about 60% of our audience is global, not just from New
Wow.
Jersey. So it's something that we would like to continue to invest in because these are folk who come in, ask very good questions, and it also improves the vibrancy of the community here. So we are looking at somewhat of a hybrid solution going forward. Somehow, have an interactive webcast, live webcast, as the speaker is talking in an in-person event. That's something we're still investigating. We're working with Atlanta Jug, of course, who's family and friends with us, and with Chicago Jug. So we're three of the, I guess, largest jugs here, and we sort of coordinate, decide how we do things together.
Sure.
And then this is both Garden State JUG and New York JavaSIG, both of which I'm a member of. So we're looking at how we can best solve this.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of that sort of hybrid stuff moving forward, and I'm very curious to see how we all kind of pull that off, technologically speaking. But
Yeah,
I do think that's a really interesting aspect of this. I saw this in Ken Cousins' email, his weekly email, the jarheads. I think he wants people to start using that phrasing. But the GIDS is this week. The well, we call it the Great India Developer What's the S stand for? Can't believe I'm blanking.
Summit.
Thank you. But
AWS
now it's
Developer Summit. Yeah.
really becoming more international in the sense that it's again drawing from all over the world, and I think there's a huge upside to that in bringing in an audience that maybe we wouldn't normally get to reach. So it'd be very curious to see, how that all plays out. And, I'm very interested to see when we all start feeling comfortable. And that first time you're in a room with 25, 30, 50, 70, 100 other people is going to be interesting in the Minnesota
Interesting.
phrasing of the
Interesting
word.
is a good keyword. Yes.
Yeah,
There will be trepidation, of course, but hopefully we'll all be vaccinated. There'll be some minimum set of rules that we'll have to
sure.
establish. Folk have to be vaccinated. There has to be some amount of social distancing, hand sanitizers, of course. Make those things available. Mask up. Why not? Maybe it's okay to meet after that. So I am definitely looking forward to having that back.
I do hope that our emphasis on sanitation sticks with us moving forward. Whether that's washing our hands, making sure that you spray things down. I do hope that that's not something that disappears, once this is in the rear view.
Yeah, maybe some good habits will continue to stick around, and maybe it's for the better. We have to have some silver lining for this.
Right.
Maybe it is that.
Well, I mean, my watch reminds me to wash my hands now when I walk in my front door, so that's
Very
kind of
nice.
nice, and then it makes sure that I wash my hands for 20 seconds, which is also kind of useful. It is interesting to see what other activities I could do where it thinks I'm washing my hands. It doesn't quite understand that doing the dishes is not the same thing, but hey, it's the initial
The
implementation.
start.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
place to start. Well, I probably should have started here, but I just kind of get kicked off here. What's your background? How did you get involved with Java user groups? What pulled you into that environment, and then we'll kind of branch off from there.
Yeah, well, I started, I guess, I started working with computers way back. About 1986 was when I started with computers. And I started working by creating retro graphics for my dad. I used to get paid for that. And
Nice.
that's how I started, fiddling around with computers. And then I guess I got my Commodore 64 right after, and I think it was 87. And my first code reviewer and business analyst in one is my mom.
Oh my.
She's the one, yeah, she's been my code reviewer even some days today. I send my code to her and she asks me what it does and she gives me feedback.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's how I started. Then I started working on GW Basic and whatever else. And then so it led on to a lot of different things and eventually started working in Smalltalk.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
way back at, I think 98 is when I started with Smalltalk. And 99 is when I got introduced to using Java at work. I was learning Java before that. I started using it in 99, came over to the United States, and started, I guess, working with Smalltalk and Java together. I
Oh
was
wow.
working at a pharmaceutical company developing clinical trials, everything in Smalltalk, porting over to Java. So I had to know both languages, and it was something that I found quite beneficial. But at the same time, I was facing a lot of difficulties learning Java. I'm not someone who learns from books. So I was looking for other ways in which I could sort of learn Java quickly, learn features that I was not readily using. And I came across this meetup group called New York JavaSIG. So I decided to go attend once, super impressed with how they were running it. And it's one of the oldest jugs in United States. I don't know if you're aware of that. We just celebrated our 25th anniversary last year.
Crazy.
Um, yeah, so back in about 2004, I requested to become a volunteer at the JUG, and Frank Greco was kind enough to immediately include me into the volunteership. In about 2010, I was made a JUG leader for New York JavaSig, and I've continued since. Last year, we created Garden State Java User Group, which is a sister organization in New Jersey, and we're trying to grow that out now.
Fantastic. What do you think is a misconception about user groups from people who attend? I mean, I've certainly been to plenty of them as both an attendee and as a presenter, and I'm just curious from your side as an organizer, what do you think some of the misconceptions are about what it takes to start a group, grow a group, maintain a group?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say misconception exactly, but most people do not understand how much of a work it is to get a new jug set up or to
Hmm.
maintain an existing jug, right? There's a lot of activity that goes on behind the scenes, be it regulatory or official paperwork that you have to file, taxes that you have to file, having a board, having all kinds of meeting minutes for every single meeting. Those are activities that are not visible to everybody. But when it comes to the actual meetup day, there is a lot of coordination, stitching, which you probably are very
Right.
well versed with and aware of. Um, that escapes normal attendees who just see the show, don't see what is going on behind it. I think it's true of any production, and I think that is what is one common, I guess, lack of awareness that most people are unfortunately faced with. And sometimes we educate them, show them what we do. We open up our doors and say, "This is what is the process. Tell us how you would think it can be improved." And so we get some feedback there. We have advisors for our Java user groups who sometimes attend our sessions, tell us what they think as their opinions to improve the process are, and they then go spread the word to the attendees on how it has to be run a jug. So that's how we're approaching it.
Yeah, I think most people don't fully appreciate how much work goes into getting the meetings set up, getting the venue, getting food, giveaways, all of the things that happen at these events, and I think people sometimes have a misconception that it's almost always volunteers. These are people who are giving up in many cases significant chunks of their own time to help the community, and I think we all owe a debt of gratitude for the folks like you who are putting in that time and effort.
Well, there's a big community of drug leaders, so definitely thanks to all the drug leaders who are doing this. Specifically in our area in the Northeast, one other challenge we face is getting a venue,
Oh,
right?
sure.
It's not as easy as getting a venue. Most of the parts of the country, New York and New Jersey, are probably more security conscious and more protected in how they dole out spaces. So it's harder for us to get venues. Speakers abound. I mean, we got speakers lined up for until next March. We just don't have venues when we go into an in-person, I guess, mode again. So
Sure.
the current online is working out great for us.
Well, and to your point, I think that's probably going to continue in some way, shape, manner, or form moving forward. And
That is
I think
very true.
it's possible some of these jokes may just always be, virtual. I think that's a likelihood too. But
Mm.
another thing that I found really interesting is when I think back to, kind of the early aughts, there was a local user group. There'd be a Java user group, maybe there'd be something in the .NET space. But it sure seems like now, in really any moderately sized city, you could basically throw a dart at the calendar and find two or three different events going on in a given day in a given city.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What do you think has caused kind of that explosion of meetups and user groups and all sorts of different things that we just seem to have a proliferation of them now?
Well, I'm hoping it's a positive answer as in community. But I'm sure there are people who are lazy like I am and don't like to read and just go to jugs and other user groups to learn stuff without having to spend more time, pouring in a book or an ebook.
Sure.
Um, yeah, but look, it's the networking aspect of it. That's the most important thing. One of the main benefits of having been in a jug, both as a member, volunteer, and a leader, I guess, are that you get to network with a lot of people, not
Yeah.
just your regular attendees, but also the speakers, and you form a sort of a collaboration, a network that you can expand towards and leverage at a later point. So, uh, yeah, so it's something that I appreciate a lot.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that we miss a little bit with the in person is not being able to do the networking. And I know a lot of us as software engineers, that's not maybe the most comfortable thing, but it's important to have that group of people you can talk to, the folks who are going through the same struggles you are. I've got a grad student right now who's sort of teaching herself mobile development, and I've really encouraged her to document her learning process, the tutorials she went through, the things she learned, because it will help someone else, and there'll be someone else who's going to go through that same thing she's going through, and they may find one of her blog entries and be like, oh, thank goodness you wrote this up. Now I know how to solve that. You just saved me 2 hours of time. And I think that's a huge part of this, is how do we sort of help that next group of people along, or that next person who's learning it. So
Absolutely, and I agree with that. And I think my motto is "Docendo decimus." It's Latin for "by teaching you learn." So basically, anything I know, I'm going to put it out in a blog or some post, and I hope someone who's smarter than me will look at it and will correct me so I can learn better from that. And that's something that's the best way to move forward. And the graduate student you alluded to just now, that's great. That's exactly what we should all be doing.
I didn't know we were going to go from soccer or football to Latin all in the course of 15 minutes. I mean, this is what I enjoy about doing this. I have no idea what we're going to get into until we get into it.
It's craziness.
So there is one thing we have to talk about, and that's our shared love of coffee. So
Coffee.
what have you had today? What did you drink? What I know you've got a couple different mugs. You've already shown me. This one's very spiffy. I'm a big Star Wars fan.
And of course, I have my Old Faithful prescription coffee.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so I'm very biased towards dark roasts. I currently heavily consume copious amounts of Green Mountain dark roast, the dark magic. That's what it's called.
Okay.
It's a Keurig K-cup. That's my go-to. I also love Newman's Organics. They're again K-cups. And for pour overs, I have Turkish coffee that I keep really handy. I have 7 or 8 Turkish coffee flavors that I just keep. My friend brings them over from Turkey, and I just stock them up.
Boy, we were talking earlier. I've done 2 trips to Turkey, and the thing that amazes me is they're little glass cups, and they're so freaking warm. And I don't understand how
Yeah, I don't
people.
know how they do it.
I don't know how they do it, and it's kind of a unique. I don't really know how to describe it. It's not an espresso, but it's not drip coffee. I mean, it's this unique kind of
Somewhere in
thing.
between. It's
Yeah.
viscous. At the same time, it's got the yeah. It's not exactly espresso, and
No.
there's a lot of coffee felt at the bottom. So
Yep.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's the first time you drink it, you're like, oh wait, there's something at the bottom. Like, yeah, don't leave that be. Leave that be. Yeah, I was told that you just get used to holding the very hot glass, and I thought, maybe, but I'm gonna pass. I think on that. I
So
like.
a lot of places in Turkey, I don't know if they still do, but as far as I remember, and most places that are Turkish restaurants here or have Turkish presence in the restaurants here have a silver holder on top of the, to hold the glass coffee mug in. And that's kind of neat. I like that. It looks like I'm drinking out of silver. It's cool.
That seems a little more practical.
Yeah, that too.
Well, you and I have been part of some, at least by my definition, rather epic Twitter threads around coffee, and I'm a little surprised we haven't had one now in at least a week or two. I'm
It's
not
been a
sure.
week and a half. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. I don't know if we're all just kind of
Well, we
buckling
should
down.
change that.
We probably should. We should probably kick something off there. But I'm kind of a double espresso guy. That's like 2 double espressos. That's sort of my gets me going for the day, and I feel pretty good about life. But I'm really close to trying pour over because I did get a new kettle that's very clearly designed for pour over, and it
Very
does kind
nice.
of make me want to go down that path. But I also realize that's going to cause my CFO some grief because it does mean I have to buy additional things. I
Yes,
can't.
there is
I
there
need
is
more.
purchases
Right.
involved. Yes.
Exactly. But I've
Have you ever tried South Indian coffee?
no.
Have you tried any Indian coffee for that matter?
To the best of my knowledge, no.
Okay, that is something we'll have to change quickly. I'll
Yes, we
probably
will.
send you some Indian coffee. It is stronger, so
Okay.
it's Smart Heckler Strong. It's got chicory in it, so it's something definitely I recommend.
Okay.
You should definitely try it out.
All right. I'm down for that. We were talking about this in the pre-show about getting delivery service and things like that, and somewhere over the course of the last 6 months, we'd ordered in some Indian food, and I was a little apprehensive because I love Indian food. My wife loves Indian food, but my kid is a typical teenager who has a very limited palate. Let me just put it that way. And so I sort of figured that this wasn't going to go over very well. And he enjoyed it so much, he's basically like, "Can we order this again tomorrow?" And it's like, "Oh, well, go on." So it is interesting to see how some of that does indeed span through. But yes, I'm a huge fan of Indian food, so I have to imagine I would enjoy Indian coffee as well.
It is definitely stronger, and most people in India drink it with some milk in it, not cream,
Okay,
actual milk. And they do put a wee bit of sugar as well. But
sure.
yeah, that's how coffee is consumed. I'll send you directions as well as a pack of coffee.
Fantastic. Please do. So you and I've been in this industry a while. Do you have any advice for your younger self? Is there anything that you wish you had known earlier? If I had known then what I know now.
My advice to myself would be listen more, talk less. I didn't follow that quite a bit. Now I know better. But yeah, that's something that I would definitely go tell myself one more time.
Sure.
Uh, that was a lesson learned, and I'm now able to put that into action. Other than that, yeah, make more friends. There's never anything called a maximum number of friends. Just keep making more and more friends. Network even more. I used to
That's a
be an
great point.
introvert. It took me a long while to break that shell and sort of start networking. And I guess, yeah, I would have done more of it if I had a chance to go back and do it over.
Yeah, I agree that that's certainly not my strongest suit either. I'm not the world's best listener. I'm not the most outgoing individual. So it is it it can be hard to do. It's intimidating, to try to say hi to somebody you don't know at a conference, at a meetup. But I strongly encourage it. Usually when I'm doing a presentation, I try to advise people to eat lunch with somebody they don't know, because you never know who you're going to meet at one of these events that is going to help you with a problem you have, or help you get a new job, or whatever it happens to be. And it's hard, but it's pretty darn important.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe it's not even health. It's just like you know another person now. So why not?
Right.
And I mean, I've had some benefits out of this as well, in that I go to a place that I don't have many friends at. I have few contacts that I made over a few years. I just will call them up and we get to meet. And I'm no longer, a stranger alone in a new place. So definitely that helped.
But and you never know where you're going to run into somebody. Yeah,
Oh,
that's
yes.
the other thing. So this was pre-pandemic, so 2, 3 years ago, I was in Oslo for Java Zone, and I was walking down the stairs, coming into the main kind of hall where all the food and all the vendors and everything are. And I just sort of stopped to kind of look around, because it's such a neat site. They have it at sort of the local hockey rink, if you think of it that way. And so as you're walking down, you get this beautiful view of everything. And I just sort of
Oh, very
stopped.
nice.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I looked to my right, and there was Roy from the Atlanta user group, from my company as well. And I'm just like, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? And it just was this bizarre, like, I would never have expected to run into you in Oslo, and yet here you are, and we hung out
There you
and
go.
got
Yeah,
lunch and coffee, and it's like, hey, that makes it, a much more pleasant experience when you get to hang out with people. But I
absolutely. Yeah.
miss that. There's no getting around that,
Makes it two of us right there then.
right? I mean, that's the thing I'm most looking forward to post pandemic, is being able to actually, like, go get a cup of coffee, with you, and actually, catch up
Let's
face to
do that.
face. Maybe there'll
Yeah.
still be a little more physical distance, because we don't want to get each other sick, but at least we'll be in the same vicinity, instead of
Vicinity.
dealing with,
Absolutely.
Zoom lag and everything else. But
I'm looking forward to that, definitely.
yeah, me too. Me too.
Yeah.
So in addition to, your day job, and in addition to being part of these user groups, what do you do for fun? What are your hobbies? What keeps you grounded?
Well, so there are a few things that I definitely do. I listen to old-time music, specifically Indian music. It's
Oh,
not a lot of Western, but Western I still listen to Beatles and Pink Floyd. So I'm old, but yeah, that's something that I still do.
you're
Um,
experienced.
Uh, okay, thank you. That's a better way of putting it. And I read. I read quite a lot. Yeah, so fiction, anything fiction you throw at me, I'm going to read it. Comics and fiction, I have about 5,000 books, ebooks
Wow.
now, and I just have to go through those. So it's all on my laptop. It's backed up. I have two backups, obviously. Yeah, and it's something that I enjoy doing in my spare time. Just put on, headset and start reading books.
Now, I struggle with that. If I'm listening to music, my brain starts going along with the music, and then I can't
Uh,
focus on the book. I've tried it's, but I want to distract my eyes. That's the other thing. Like, I don't, I
that's it.
hate,
Yeah.
I can't just listen. I can't listen to a book. I've tried that. It
Yeah,
just doesn't work
I
for
can't
my
do
body.
audiobooks
No,
now.
my eyes
No,
then
but
are like,
have
I
you
need to do something.
have you tried trance music?
No, you're
Okay,
teaching me
that's
about a bunch of
something.
stuff today.
Trance music is great. It doesn't have any lyrics, or mostly it doesn't have lyrics, and it's just tunes.
Oh, okay.
You can soon zone it out. It's something that's soothing, and it's in the background while you do whatever you want. So there's no lyrics that cause your brain to process anything. It's
Sure.
just nice tunes going through with electronic, and keeps your rhythm in you, especially when you're coding.
Nice. This was many years ago, but the first book I ever wrote, I actually wrote much of it while I had West Wing reruns going in the background. because it was just enough to kind of distract my brain, but I didn't really need to focus on it because I'd already seen it,
Yeah,
and I would
there
just
you
kind of
go.
clickety clack away, and it's weird how our minds work, to say the least. But
No, that's definitely the same case with me. Should I need to focus on something? Forget music. It's Star Trek Next Generation that's on my iPad, Netflix, or Prime, and there you go. I'm doing my work.
oh, that's
And it works like
fantastic.
a charm because I have sort of memorized most of the episodes.
Sure.
I can't recollect and tell you right now anything, but once I look at an episode, I know exactly where it's going, and I know the whole story. So it's just like I already know this, and I can go back to my code. It's nice hum in the background.
Right. Well, I mean, it's funny. That's kind of how I got into watching Premier League is when NBC got the rights for broadcast here in the US. Their perfect timing, their Saturday morning, Sunday morning, it was the kind of thing I could turn on when my son was younger. And, when your kids are little, they get up at ungodly hours on the weekends. And, so coverage would start here in the Midwest at 6 in the morning some days. And I could turn that on and not worry about what commercial was going to show up or what else would happen. It's like it could just kind of be on in the background and, distract both of us. And then kind of has evolved from
Work.
there for us. But what are you going to do?
Very nice.
So speaking of books, do you have any favorite books? Do you have any recommendations? Any series recommendations?
Well, I'm a Trekkie, out and out Trekkie. But yeah, so uh, as far as series go, yes, anything Star Trek. Heck, for that matter, I even watched Babylon 5, so I don't know.
Oh,
And then as far as books go, I don't know if I'm a good person to recommend any books. I mean, I read almost anything that's out there. Brad Meltzer, probably I've read most of his series. Um, Dan Brown's entire series.
yeah.
Terry Pritchett. Um, what else? I mean, I can't even recollect the names. Frederick Fawcett, of course. I've read everything by Frederick Fawcett. So yeah, I'm into those kinds of fiction series.
Wow. Do you have any? So if there's somebody out there who's like, I really want to get into Star Trek, but I don't know where to start because there's so many hours of Star Trek. What what would you recommend to a newbie? Where would you begin?
Ooh, that's kind of a tricky question.
Right?
Um, yeah, so I would actually start at the beginning. The original series, that's what I'm a huge fan of. But that's not where it began. Enterprise is where it began. So I don't know if you really want a chronological sequence, that's where Enterprise is where one would start.
Mm-hmm.
But I start with the original series, then I go into the Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and then come Enterprise and Discovery. That's
Okay.
how I would do it. I've mostly skipped the movies. Yes, there are movies in there as well, but I like the newer movies better than the older ones.
Sure.
The ones with I forget the gentleman's name, but yeah, the newer Star Trek movies.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think because they're almost self-contained, but there's references. I mean, I should really get Ken Cousin. We should like phone a friend and get Cousin in on this. I'm sure he'd have some thoughts. But I have kind of kicked that around of how would I try to begin something like that with my teenager. I mean, you're always kind of figuring out like, well, I'm always trying to get him into those pop culture references so that he has a little bit of that understanding. And some of it sticks, some of it doesn't. He goes on these streaks. We rewatched Ted Lasso over the weekend. That was our nod to it was terrible weather, so we decided to just burrow out and watch
Very
through it.
nice.
It really does. It rewatches very well. Let me put it that way. Some series not so much, but Ted Lasso gave me just as much joy on the second as it did on the first, and I'm guessing we'll watch it again before the season redebuts in July. I think second season comes out. So
Very nice.
anyway, I should be getting sponsorship plugs from these guys. But so, do you have a favorite of all of them? Is there one that you kind of find yourself reaching back for, or one you're like, this is I prefer to watch this over that version?
Yeah, so it's not so much a favorite, but it is something I do go back to all the time because the first time I watched it, it was on black and white television, the original series, and that's what I will always go back to.
Okay.
I enjoy watching it in color now, so it's a different experience, and I guess my childhood memories are being recolored as if I
Oh,
may,
sure.
and I enjoy that. It's great. Of course, it is a bit more, for lack of a better word, cartoonish now, but
Mm,
I still enjoy the original series.
nice.
And I guess I'm one of those geeks who like both Star Wars and Star Trek. So yes, so I switch between both, and I guess I'm doing the same thing with my kids. I got them to watch Star Wars 4, 5, and 6 first,
Yep.
and then 1, 2, and 3 sequence, and they enjoyed it.
Now, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. You know, if you said favorite movie for me, it's Empire without a doubt. And I do love your Star Wars mug. But when I this is one of the coolest things about being a parent is you get to re-experience things through your kids, and that first time I ever showed my son 4, 5, and 6, it took a while before I was willing to show him 2 and 3, and I refused to show him the first,
Makes sense.
abomination. The only way he saw number 1 was when I was on a trip and my wife showed it to him.
Oh,
And then they wouldn't tell me about it for a couple weeks, and then they admitted that they watched it. And there was this brief period where my son really enjoyed some of the battle scenes from 2 and 3, but as he's matured, I think he really understands where they fit in the sort of order. But
that's fair. That's
but
very
he and
fair.
I did a bit of a Star Wars binge. I don't know, this was still in the wintertime, and we actually decided that Machete Order should probably start with Rogue One now, because that does sort
Ooh,
of lead well into New Hope.
yeah,
Now,
the
in
new
fairness,
hope.
I think that's appropriate for people who have seen the movies. Now, if you've not seen the movies, then maybe you leave Rogue One, as an exercise to the reader. But I don't know. I mean, it is an interesting debate we have as parents. Like, how do we introduce our
How do
children
you
to
do
some of
this?
these
Yes,
things? But
very important debates, of course.
I think so. I think so. I mean,
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I still remember one day in college. I don't entirely know how I managed to do this, but we had this auditorium in this sort of art building, and for some reason they just like let me use it for the weekend.
Oh,
I
nice.
still don't know how this worked. And so we had this, I mean, it was like a theater, and so we watched the 3 movies on the big screen in the theater in the art room and just kind of hung out, and it was kind of a fun way to
That's
spend a
super
weekend.
cool.
But
That's
I
something
still
I
don't know
would
how
love
they
to do.
trusted a 19-year-old, 20-year-old, however old I was, in this room with all this equipment. But I guess that
Worked
was the
out.
joy of a small liberal arts college. So all right, so you're one of those Star Wars and Star Trek kind of geeks. Is there a movie that if you're scrolling along on the TV, whether you're in a hotel room or at home, that once you hit it, you're like, all right, I'm in. I gotta watch this to completion now.
Well, there is one movie that would do that for me. That's Idiocracy, which has nothing to do with
Yes.
Idiocracy or Office Space, for that matter.
Oh
If I
God.
find it in any channel, I guess I'm stuck with it. I just have to see it to completion.
Oh, Office Space is so
Yeah,
good.
I don't know. It's just me. I'm not going to even try justify myself.
You
No
don't have
point.
to. There's no. I 100% I agree 100% on Office Space. Idiocracy is got some amazing lines in it. I had some coworkers, colleagues of mine that was a catchphrase on our team, was a couple of lines out of Idiocracy. So I can completely relate to that. My wife and I have been sort of in this training program to ride a metric century in May, and unfortunately the weather in Minnesota hasn't been nice enough for us to get outside as much as we'd hoped. So we've been spending more time than I ever thought I would on the trainer, which means we've been watching a lot of movies. And it's kind of fun to be able to just watch a movie while you're, turning the legs over for 2.5, 3 hours at a crack. But my son informed me the other day that the basement definitely had a bit of an odor to it from the hours of us sweating in our little basement room. But anyway. Are there any TV shows that because I mean there's certain shows that they're in such syndication. I believe it is a requirement that at any hour of any day there is a Law and Order playing on some channel somewhere.
There you go.
Is,
Yeah.
is there a TV show that if you're flipping around and you hit it, you're like, all right, we're gonna see this through to completion?
Well, that would probably have to be Law and Order and Criminal Intent.
Okay,
So those probably, yeah, if I find it anywhere, I'm just going to switch to it and then watch it. That is provided the kids are not there, right? So
fair
they
point.
don't enjoy that so much. And once again, another movie that will probably get stuck if both me and the wife are sitting together. She will not. She refuses to watch Office Space or
Really?
yeah, yeah, she's done with it. It's just like she's
Okay.
watched it so many times.
Too
She's
many
just like,
times.
no, I'm not watching it. However, there is one movie that both of us sit, two movies rather, that both of us sitting together will always be on as soon as we find it on any other channels. That is My Cousin Vinny and Who's Russian. Those are two movies that
Oh,
for some reason she enjoys, and I'm stuck with watching it with her. So
that's fair. I can see Idiocracy maybe running a little thin. I'm a little surprised on Office Space because that is a movie both my wife and I do enjoy quite a bit. And we have sort of talked about like if we showed it to the kid, I don't think he would appreciate it because there's just too much of you've got to have worked
Yeah,
in an office to
it's like
understand it.
Dilbert. Unless you have work, you probably won't get a lot
No,
of what's going on there.
no,
Yeah.
it's just not nearly as funny. Yeah, there's no getting around it. So as you know, we have like limitless content now on all these streaming services. Is there anything that you've been binging during the pandemic that you have found particularly I don't know, helpful, or that you're just like, oh, thank God this is here and
I don't know about helpful, but yes, I've been binging, and I think it's probably not helpful because it's sort of reduced my sleep time. This is
right?
when I usually binge, and yeah, I got dark circles through it. No, but
Coffee. That's why we drink coffee.
there you go. That's exactly what coffee's purpose is. No, but I've been sort of catching up again on my DC series
Oh,
rather than the Marvels. Uh, when I was younger, I used to have a lot more exposure to DC than to Marvel.
okay.
Uh, at least in India, that was what was the case. So we've grown more on DC superheroes than we did on Marvels. And yeah, so I'm catching up. Did you know that the first Captain Marvel was from DC and not from Marvel?
I did not.
Yeah, so the first Captain Marvel is now called Shazam.
Interesting. Were there some trademark infringements
Yes,
there? Yeah.
there was there was another comics company that actually created this Captain Marvel, and they were bought over by DC, and there was a
Okay.
copyright infringement placed on them, and there was like all sorts of legalese. So they decided to rename Captain Marvel as Shazam. I think the
Interesting.
name was Marvel, not Captain Marvel. It
Okay.
was probably Cool Marvel or Kid Marvel or something like that.
Sure. But some lawyers are like, yeah, that's too close. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
That's an interesting question. We did watch Batman Rises over the weekend, and I enjoy the Nolan ones myself quite a bit. But what's mysterious to me is why the Marvel Cinematic Universe has taken off the way it has, and the DC movies, by and large, not
It's
so
sort of
much.
thing. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, why do you think that is? As someone who kind of grew up with DC, I mean, there's great characters there, there's great villains there.
Absolutely great characters. Yeah. So I believe there's a lot more fanfare and a lot more advertising done around Marvel.
Mm,
And DC sort of missed that boat.
sure,
DC did not go for the glamour, they just went for the heroics of their superheroes. Um, I think Marvel, especially through Avengers, went more with the glamour aspect of it,
sure.
the shininess or whatever you call it. And that has hit with this generation. So what do you do? Maybe the next generation picks up on DC again. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, I think part of it is just the very deep universe they've created and the fact that they've managed to keep this storyline going through so many different movies, so many different
Yeah,
franchises even within that is pretty remarkable. And then you see what Disney's doing now with the add-on TV shows. WandaVision was, I think,
absolutely. Yeah,
incredible,
yeah.
and I've enjoyed Winter Soldier quite a bit as well. And I just think it's really interesting to see how they're looking at this not as just a one and done story or maybe one with a sequel, but as no, that we're telling a massive story here. I think that's a really interesting take on this.
And they're weaving the web throughout, right? It's not just like they had segregated franchisees of different characters. They're bringing them together, and
Right.
the gel is very seamless. They've done it well. I noticed that DC also tries to do this, but it somehow doesn't gel
It
so
feels
correctly. It's
forced,
more like
doesn't it?
forced. Yes,
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah, that's a great point because it feels like DC tried to do that, with the whole Justice League and whatnot, and
Yeah,
I, the Wonder Woman has been fantastic. That 84 was a little weird, but the original one, like thank you Gal Gadot, like please more of that. That's just amazing. But it does seem a little forced. I really, although I did watch the massive 4 hour cut,
so
and
did
that
I.
was I thought quite a bit better than the
It was
original.
decent, yes.
Yeah, although at 4 hours, that's a commitment right there. But but yeah, it's I think it's part of this overall trend, though, that we've seen in media. You know, there was a time we talk about like what we grew up with. I remember watching reruns of shows where they were all very self-contained. There was no storyline that extended beyond the half hour of the show, the 22 minutes. And then you started to see these long arc sort of shows show up, you know, like Sopranos and The Wire and Breaking Bad, and where you've got all these bits that sort of lead on to one another, and you have to take the whole thing in context. And I think that's kind of what's bleeding into now movies too, where these storylines are following across. I mean, how many hours of content are there now in
Yes.
that universe? And it's
And
almost
it
overwhelming.
is hard to keep track. I mean, there's so
Yes,
much going on. It's like someone has to have a sort of a dictionary or register on their site to know what exactly is going on with each character. So
right.
some people have that patience.
Well, and then to even be able to remember some of that, and I would love to know the process that they use to keep track of some of that themselves, because there's Easter eggs that are hiding in a lot of these places that the real deep, hardcore fans are catching on to. They're kind of going over, my head on, that's a reference to this thing that happened there. And I do think that's one of the aspects of being able to binge that I really enjoy is when you get to watch three, four, five of these in a row, you start to pick up on that more easily than when it's
Exactly.
separated by a
Exactly.
week or 3 months, as it were. I think that's another one of those things that our kids maybe don't appreciate. They don't know what network television schedules are the way maybe we had to, and we had to walk uphill to school both ways, and for me in the snow, but
Yeah, back in the day, that's what I would. Yeah, yeah. I don't think kids appreciate being told that, but yes.
well, and I mean, it'll be interesting to see what that morphs into, as our kids get older. What does this look like for that next generation? Because I don't think that's going away, and I think it's going to be fascinating to see kind of what this can become. But although I feel like it's a little overwhelming when you consider how many different streaming services there are, how much content there is. Where do you even begin? It reminds me, a horrible segue, but it reminds me a bit of Java. I mean, I grew up with Java, and as I've joked in the
What
past,
is this Java you speak of?
right? I mean, it started. I mean, I'm sure you remember when the Nutshell book was thin. It was like 80 pages or 100 pages or something, and then I remember seeing a Nutshell book that was
No longer
500 pages, a
nutshell.
thousand pages. Like, no, you can't use Nutshell anymore. It's too big for that. And so I've reflected on if you were somebody getting started in the Java ecosystem today, it's got to be a bit overwhelming. I mean, like, where do you
Yes.
begin and how do you sort of pick up on that? And I mean, do you have any thoughts, recommendations for somebody who's just getting started with Java?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, thank you for that question. It's something that we're heavily promoting under the JCP Executive Committee. It's called Java in Education. So we're starting with how we can start Java more on the college track for students who are coming in. However, if you're already out of college and you're somewhat of a seasoned professional in the world of development coming into Java, there are amazing books that are still valid. Bruce Eckel comes to mind as the first. Thinking in Java is probably was my Bible when I started. I
Yeah.
believe it still is one of the best books. And there was a book by Detail in Detail that I would I guess these were the two books on my shelf all the time. Probably still have them in my attic, but yeah, those are the two books that I started with. I still would recommend those.
Oh God, it's funny you mentioned that. I actually taught a study group out of thinking in Java back in the day, and I was brought on this team to basically teach the team Java, and it was just a fascinating experience to sort of walk them through this process of a language that I knew fairly well. I think I programmed in at least a couple years at that point, and so hear a bunch of experienced developers who were just new to it, and again, where do you begin? Where do you start? What do you teach them, at first, and how do you help for some of them coming from a more procedural background? How do you get them thinking in more of an object oriented way? And
Yeah.
it was an interesting experience. But yes, I have very fond memories of thinking in Java. And I remember one day reading one of Bruce Tate's books, and I can't remember the exact title, but it was Bitter something, Bitter Java, Bitter EJB. And I was reading that at my desk, and my manager came over and he looked at the title and he said, "Did I make a hideous mistake in choosing Java for this project?" I'm like, "Nope, no, no, it's fine. Just trust me. I know what I'm doing." He's like, "Okay," but oh man, are there any other Books that you found to be really influential for you as a developer, as a Java person, anything in that space?
Not just as a Java person, but so a few books that I really, really have, I consider go to, are one of them is Martin Fowler's refactoring book.
Yeah,
That's something that I find very useful. Test-driven development, and I think it was called Enterprise Programming Best Practices. Uh, I can't remember the name, but yeah, there are a few books that I have as go-tos that I'm probably going to list them out on my blog, and I'll put them on Twitter. My apologies. I'm so used to the books I don't even remember their names anymore. But yeah, there are a couple of books that I still do visit, and most of them sort of start off with small talk as the base,
sure.
right? And that is something that I'm hoping to see come back into this world, more small talk, because anyone who learns small talk learns real object-oriented programming first. And then applying those to Java makes it much more easier to understand the concepts and do Java the right way. What I have found is that there's a lot of potential abuse possible when you just start using Java,
Sure.
and most of it is because you're using Java based upon either some Stack Overflow search or some program that you found elsewhere, and you adapt it to your needs rather than rewrite it with a more object-oriented philosophy in your mind. And learning something like a small talk would help overcome that hurdle of understanding objects and how to sort of place and encapsulate different content.
I,
That's
I've always wondered why small talk didn't take off more.
I
And
think it's the same story with Marvel versus DC.
yeah,
Java is the Marvel of this universe, and small talk became the DC.
yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, that's not a bad way of looking at it because I mean I know so many people who wrote small talk and loved it. It's a very elegant language, and I am a little surprised. I guess maybe there's an argument over resources, memory, things like that back in the day, but I'd be really curious to know. I mean, I'm just fascinating just to sort of try to figure out why some languages explode and some you've hardly ever heard of, even though they're fantastic tools. But I don't know.
You never know; it might actually make a comeback, especially with the Graal VM.
Yeah,
Small
great
talk
point.
might be on its way back. Uh,
Great point.
And one of the biggest benefits of small talk is that it. I'm sorry, I'm not a paid salesman for small talk. One of the biggest benefits you get out of it is it's not just a programming language.
Yeah.
It's a programming language, an IDE, and an operating system all built into one, right? So you open this environment, and there you go. You have small talk, and then it has images. We now talk about Docker images. Small talk had images, and we're talking 1970, 40 years plus. They were ahead of their time.
Yeah,
It's just that the adoption at that time did not catch up, which is why they're probably stuck there.
sure.
It's unfortunate.
Well, I think that's a great reminder that so many of the things that we look at as being new in this industry aren't really that new. They've been
Exactly.
around for a while. I always remember this story from when Java was starting to bring lambdas into the equation, and on some mailing list, someone basically said, "I don't understand why Java needs these newfangled lambdas." And it's like, I hate to break it to you, but this ain't new. Like this has been around a long time, and but I think for so many developers, time begins with the first language they learned. And I don't think we do a good job in this industry of teaching people the history of how did we get here. And we borrowed these ideas from Smalltalk. We borrowed
Exactly.
these ideas from Lisp, and just to really appreciate, where all this stuff comes from. But
That's very
yeah,
true.
yeah, that's
Hey,
a good
Nate,
point.
can I
Yeah.
excuse myself for 2 seconds? There is something wrong with my power charger. Let me
Uh-oh.
go flip my power charger. It's going off battery. So give
No
me 2 seconds.
problem. You
I
bet.
have it right here. Let me
See,
just
it's
get
the
that.
beauty of going live. We'll fix it in post. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm smart enough to know how to cut out something from the middle of a presentation, but it's perfectly fine. This is what happens on a random Monday. A couple weeks ago, I had the tech happens week where seemingly every time I got on any kind of a call or a presentation, something didn't work. I did one presentation where for some reason the tool would not find my camera, and so I had to go without my camera. I had another one where the sound just decided to stop working at some point. Welcome back, my friend. Technology is great right until it isn't. I was just lamenting. I think it was either last week or the week before. I had the week of tech happens. I was giving one presentation, and then my microphone just decided, yeah, no, I'm
Talk
done,
about is great.
and I have no idea why. It just everything was fine. It looked like I wasn't muted. I wasn't muted on my mic, but sound just wasn't coming through, and had to actually. I think I had to finish that talk on my phone, which is always fun.
Oh, wow.
But what are you gonna do? What are you gonna
Well,
do?
mostly it's my Wi-Fi that goes out, especially because I'm in a corner of the house, and my Wi-Fi is all the way on the other side. So that's something I always have to risk, and I have to
Right.
always keep my mobile ready. Tether, go back onto the connection.
Well, I discovered at some point, I think this was last year, still during pandemic time. I think about 1 in the morning or so is when my network provider decides to do maintenance because I was doing a presentation for I think Europe. I can't remember who I was doing it for, but it was late for me, early for them, and my Wi-Fi just went out, just gone, and it was gone for at least 45 minutes, and that was another one of those where I had to finish my talk on my phone, and that's not the best way to give a presentation to someone that's thousands of miles away from you, but we just
I
jazz
mean,
hands our way through
if
it.
it was a meeting or a talk, that's a different story. But if it's a presentation, I mean, that's very hard.
Yeah, it was an interesting experience to say the least, but it all worked out. It's one of the things that I've actually really enjoyed about this pandemic. Maybe that's the wrong way of phrasing it, but because we're working from home, we're seeing a part of our colleagues' lives that we don't normally see,
That's very good.
and it's so fascinating to me to remember 5, 6, 7 years ago, you'd work from home, and if the dog was barking, oh God, I'm so sorry about the dog, and people are, oh, and now it's like, dude, bring the dog in. Like, where's the
You want to see
dog?
the
Like,
dog?
how come we haven't seen your cats today, Nate? It's like, I don't know. They're apparently finding the chair more comfortable than bothering me. So I think that's a positive, though. That we're starting to see our
It is.
colleagues as more full
A
featured
person.
creatures.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. Yeah,
So
yeah. I agree. Hey, speaking of Nate, my apologies. I dropped off midway. I had to go replace my charger. But in terms of learning, there's another resource that I'm going to shamefully plug here. So I maintain a GitHub repo with Java Katas.
yes,
It's basically a training material for things like Java datetime, uh, reflection, unsafe usage, uh, method handles, you name it, completable futures. So I've got a few katas out there. If anyone is interested, those resources are available. They take you all the way from the basic to whatever you want to learn for those specific set of things.
that's
So
fantastic.
end of shameful plug.
No, I think that's great. I wish we did more of that. I think that's a fantastic way of learning languages. I ran a Java or JavaScript katas thing for at
Oh,
least a
very
couple of
nice.
years, and I had three relatively straightforward assignments for people to get through, and it was there. It's a good way of stretching that muscle of learning something a little different, and I'm a big fan of people learning languages even if they don't do it day in day out at the office. You mentioned small talk, and learning small talk will change the way you write Java. Learning Kotlin will change the way you write Java. Learning Ruby will
Absolutely.
change the way you write Java, and of course insert whatever your primary language is here. uh, Speaking of which, I know you mentioned earlier that you've done a lot more with Kotlin. What drew you to Kotlin? What do you like about Kotlin?
It was more choice than anything. It was more necessity than choice.
Sure.
There are two things that I work on as a hobby when I am not working. One of them is building my own Android apps, and the other is building IntelliJ plugins, both of which use Kotlin and Gradle, and that's where I use both of these technologies. And
Cool.
it's come. I have to tell you this. It's a joy writing code in Kotlin. It's definitely more succinct. It has enough of Java in it, so I don't feel like it's a complete alien language.
Sure.
But yeah, it's very fluid. That's probably the way I'll describe coding in Kotlin.
Well, I think we've learned some things. Let's put it that way from when Java was first on the scene, and it's useful to see languages evolve. And I know Java kind of went through this period of, I think, stagnation might be the politest way to put it. And there
Oh,
was
you
a
mean
lot
the
of,
time when Java was dead?
yeah, oh yeah, no, Java was dead like COBOL was dead, and that was something that I had said multiple times. And as someone who has spent basically their entire career writing Java, it was a weird time because we all had these very fond feelings of the language. We had lots and lots of code written in it, so we knew it wasn't going anywhere. But it also felt like the language wasn't going anywhere, and that we were missing out on some really great ideas. As Ruby and Groovy were kind of becoming ascendant, and it's been I've been very happy to see that sort of resurgence and that sort of reinvigoration, if you will, of that community. And then I think it's good to see that the language is continuing to evolve and I think mostly positive ways. So during this pandemic quarantine, have you picked up any new habits? Is there anything you're hoping you'll continue doing even once we're free to move about the country? How have you been kind of maintaining sanity?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. So one of the things I did start is working out, and that's
Nice.
something that I'm sort of doing sometime every day. I don't do much of it. I do about 25 minutes of workout, but I have my routine cut out for me, and I have significantly lost weight doing that. And then
Congratulations.
I intend to keep that going even after the pandemic. At least the restrictions are lifted up. Uh, it has brought about some additional benefits. I mean, I'm able to sleep better because of that. So I think that was a very positive outcome from me.
What do you
Yeah.
enjoy doing? What do you like to do?
So lunges, push-ups, and sit-ups, and I do a lot of breathing exercises as
Oh,
well. Yeah, so it has helped me control a lot. I have had some issues with snoring, and
oh,
I've
sure.
been trying to control that. So breathing exercises have helped quite a bit, and those are things that don't take up a lot of time or usage of equipment. I mean, you do it at, you just have some empty space in your house and you do it. And I went to, I guess, the regular channels of YouTube and did some research on what is okay, what I shouldn't do. And I started off on a small list. I've just been growing the amount of time I do each of those.
Nice.
And I do vary the routines. I don't do the exact same routines every day.
Right.
So I alternate. And yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Well, that's fantastic. I think more of us have started trying to do that, and I think that's a big plus. And I also hope on the other side of this, we all remember to continue to take time for some of those things. And I know, and my wife and I've had this conversation. I mean, I've been a remote employee now for 4 years, so this is kind of old hat for me. But it isn't for her. I mean, this is a new thing for her, and I've kind of asked her, well, what do you think you're going to do in 6 months, a year, whenever things kind of open up again? And I'm very curious to see how we as a society kind of return back. And I'm guessing that normal in 2022 is not going to look like normal did in
No,
2019.
definitely not. No, I hope not. I mean, there has to be something more positive coming out of the pandemic, and I believe people have, at least for the beginning part of the pandemic, indulged in more not so great activities
Sure.
that may have sort of contributed towards their health declines, and eventually found out that that is not going well, and have become much more stricter with their health as time went by. And I think that dip and then rise up is very beneficial. And I think this is a prime time for the pandemic to end, or the restrictions to be lifted.
Right.
And so people continue with these positive trends that they've already picked up. So I'm hoping for me to continue and for others to do whatever they're doing to continue those good habits.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that this means less commuting and that people get more time to spend with their family, doing their hobbies, working out, the things they enjoy. And I'm hopeful that that's part of what gets opened up for some of us as a part of this. I mean, again, try to find the
I'm
silver
from
lining.
New Jersey. Commute is hell always. So no matter where you're going, it's horrible. New Jersey is designed to be that way. You can't help it. There's a lot of people here,
Right.
a lot of cars. You always see a traffic jam, even in these days. Like a few days ago, I actually had to go back to work to
Okay.
pick up a new, I guess, computing device.
Sure.
And yeah, I encountered a traffic jam as soon as I hit the turnpike, and I
That's
was just like,
crazy.
"Whoa!"
Yeah, it will be fascinating to see what that looks like, and I'm curious to see what real estate looks like too. Our downtown's going to be the same. I suspect some cities will more or less go back to the way they were. Although you think about how expensive real estate is in, well, New York, New Jersey, San Francisco, LA, London. I don't know what that sort of portends, but it'll be interesting to see. So
Now, there is definitely a negative aspect to this, as a lot of mom and pop shops in the
yes,
neighborhoods. It's sort of shut it down, and that's a shame if they don't come back up. We have one of the oldest um, toy train shops in the world in Piscataway, where I live, and they shut it down about a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
And it's a very sorry state of affairs. I just hope they can come back somehow, and then we can go back to at least those things being similar to how they were before the pandemic.
Right. Yeah, I know in the Twin Cities there were some restaurants that, it's always hard to know how much of this is a good time to move on to a new venture versus, we really can't make it go. But there were a few very well-regarded restaurants in the Twin Cities that shut down over the pandemic. And, I'm curious to see what that sort of creative destruction gives us, fingers crossed that they're able to move on to something. But yeah, I guess we'll see how that plays out. But I don't know. Let me throw a few lightning round questions at you here as we wrap up. Pie or cake?
I would say cake.
Okay. All right. Ocean or mountains?
Mountains.
Okay. Okay. Food truck or Michelin stars?
Oh, food truck, man.
I mean, okay. I believe there's at least some food trucks or things like that do have one Michelin star. So maybe you can combine
They
that.
don't. I mean, I'm all about the quantity and of course the quality. I'm a foodie. I live to eat.
Oh, fantastic. Is there any place you're dying to get back to? I know we were talking about that in the pre-show about eating in a restaurant is something I'm very much looking forward
Yeah.
to at some point.
I have a couple of joints in Jersey City in New York, falafel food carts that
Mm,
the cart owners know me by name. So I don't even go order. I just go walk there and they give me what I am about to order. So yeah, and I phone in my orders to them as well. So if I'm
sure.
bringing in friends, I'm just like, hey, make four of mine. And then he's like,
Nice.
okay, you got it. So I'm dying to go back to eating there.
Nice.
Restaurants can wait. I mean, restaurants, there are plenty of restaurants to choose from, but these food courts are special. They make falafel, and that's my favorite.
Okay.
Dolma and falafel is something I would kill for.
Is that a comfort food for you? Is that
Yes, it
okay?
is.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can't wait to go back to. I was actually just having this conversation with my boss about this. That once we get to plan in-person events, there's going to be something in London, and we're going to go to Core by Claire Smith, and we're going to have a heck of a nice evening. So and I need to get my wife there. My wife hasn't had a chance to eat there yet, and so I'm
Oh, that's a
excited.
shame.
No, well, it hasn't worked. I tried to get her over there a couple times, and it just didn't work out schedule wise. But fingers crossed that drought ends here sometime in the next, total zeroth world problem, obviously, but hopefully that drought ends. So I already know the answer to some of these, so I'm going to skip over those. But what about Game of Thrones versus Lord of the Rings?
Book or video.
Well, okay, let's start with the book and then let's go to the video
Yeah.
adaptations.
So that would be Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
I have the entire series and I keep reading it. Yeah, but if it comes to the video, maybe I'll enjoy Game of Thrones, except the last season.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a pretty common lament. The last season felt rushed. I don't understand how or why they really should have been two more seasons to wrap it up. They just after
It was
being
very abrupt the
it
way they,
was
yeah.
it was it feels like we missed a few steps after being, I thought, very well paced for almost the entire run, but then just okay, we have to jam everything in the last. It's like, how about we maybe add a couple more episodes, or God forbid another season? And I don't think too many of us would have resisted. So I'm sure there's a backstory behind that. But
Sure there is, yeah.
so action, comedy, or drama?
Action.
Okay, yeah, I'm with you there.
Well,
I,
no, action or comedy, not drama. No.
the last year, drama has been very low on my list. I
Yeah.
need things that are going to distract me, and comedy's high, action, yes, please, but I'm not needing any more drama in my life.
Give
How
me
about
both.
now? Here's one for us developer types. Tabs or spaces?
Spaces.
Okay,
I
okay.
know I'm going to get a lot of flack for saying this, but spaces.
I mean, as an architect, I always have to kind of do that. What hill do I want to die on routine? And
Yeah.
this is one of those for me that I've long since just whatever the team wants is fine.
Yeah, so that's definitely the case. I'll just set up my formatter according to the team rules,
Yep.
and I'm going to use spaces. It'll
Yep.
convert to tabs if they need tabs.
I will never forget being I can't remember when this was, but I was pairing with this gentleman and we were trying to fix this bug, and I swear we spent the first hour and a half of him just going through getting everything the way he wanted it because this guy used this, and I'm just like, okay, we should probably be focusing some attention on the problem we're trying to solve and a little less on the exact way, and he was very specific about,
Particular about, yeah.
everything. And it's just like, yeah, this is a super good use of my time watching you go through and reformat these files before we can start
Yeah, with
doing
the
our
modern
job.
IDEs, these are the benefits, right? You set up
Much
your
easier.
formatter, well,
Yeah.
and boom.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that gentleman was using Emacs at the time, if I remember right.
Oh,
Although I did work with one person who wrote Java with VI, and I still to this day am not entirely sure how that's possible. And yeah, it still kind of baffles the mind. But anyway, well, I
I'm a
could,
VI guy, so watch out.
yeah,
I don't do
exactly.
Emacs.
Yeah, I mean, again, I try not to be too dogmatic. I think pragmatism is definitely our
That's
best
very
our best
fair.
approach whenever humanly possible. But well, my friend, I could talk to you for another hour and a half, but I'm sure you have more important things to do than hang out with me on a random Monday. So thank you so
Important, not
much, man.
important, but I enjoyed this time.
Well, this was great. I mean, as I've discussed before, I miss hanging out with people, and I'm delighted that I get this opportunity periodically to hang out with folks that I would normally have seen somewhere around this wonderful world of ours. And I'm hopeful that in the relatively near future, you and I are sharing a cup of coffee somewhere and
I look forward to that. I definitely look
discussing
forward
DC and Marvel.
to it.
All right.
Well,
Well, thank
thank
you,
you
my
so much
friend.
for your time.
Thank you as well. We'll be back next week with Luca. Will be joining us. He is an O'Reilly speaker, and I think he's principal architect now at AWS. So very excited to get him. He's coming to us from Europe. So excited about that. I always like to bring folks in from everywhere. Not quite as exotic as New Jersey, but we do what we can do. But anyway, thank you again, Chandra. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to getting coffee with you in the near future, my friend.
Thank you, Nate. Bye,
Cheers.
everybody.